Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Feiyu. I'm a freshman of HNNU Normal University. And today, it's my great honor to stand here to talk about a wonderful language nowadays, that is, folk music. As we all know, folk music has a long history in many countries and can reflect a national temperament. And then we will focus on the folk music of China and the USA, feeling the fascination of it. At first, in order to know the folk music better, we will learn something about the history of it. And firstly, let's see a picture. It's a young Chinese folk singer Hao Yun that performed a song in the 2014 CCTV Spring Festival Gala. In fact, it is called city folk and different from the traditional folk nowadays. And in fact, we usually see the folk singers just like Song Zuying or some minority singers or singers from special region. And but now, fewer and fewer Chinese young people are unwilling to listen to or sing folk songs. And so the performance of the folk songs only can be seen in some big events. As a matter of fact, Chinese folk song is an encyclopedia of Chinese nation's social life. The appearance of the Book of the Songs in about 6th century BC and the special music institution called Yuefu since the Han Dynasty can prove adequately the important status of the folk music. And then let's see another picture. It's a poster of a popular movie Inside Llewyn Davis. And in fact, this is not a folk singer's biopic, but to recall 1960s golden age of folk music. And I think in the prevalence of pop music today, the movie will appeal us to review the folk music and know more about it. And then let us go into the history of the USA. We must mention Joe Hill, who made the folk singers become a tool for struggling. And we should also mention Woody Guthrie, who used the folk songs to encourage people all the time. Then let us go into the history of the USA. We must mention Joe Hill, who made the folk songs become a tool for struggling. And we should also mention Woody Guthrie. Then let us go into the history of the USA. We must mention Joe Hill, who made the folk songs become a tool for struggling. And we should also mention Woody Guthrie, who used the folk songs to give poor people hope. And except for them, Bob Dylan and Joan Baez are also great folk singers. These famous people put soul in the folk music and encourage people all the time. In fact, folk singers may rarely obtain platinum, but their efforts can really resonate with everyone in their lives, and their legacy will continue to shock the world. According to my brief introduction, I think we can take a comparison between them so that we can make a further understanding of two countries' folk music. Firstly, we can find that there are much in common in two countries' folk music. And for example, two kinds of folk music all has a long history and is the origin of other folk music. Firstly, we can find that there are much in common in two countries' folk music. For example, two kinds of folk music all have a long history and is the origin of other music. And next, they all come into being and develop among working people. And then, they all exist almost across the country. And generally, the themes of folk music are associated with current social development. And in the process, two kinds of folk music have changed a lot, but something is still be preserved completely. However, there is something different between the two countries' folk music. For example, unlike the folk music of America was used to express their desire for a better life from the beginning. At first, Chinese used the folk music to describe their daily life. With regard to the performance form, Chinese usually use some traditional Chinese instruments and sometimes just sing without any accompaniment. And when Americans performed the folk music, what they use is relatively simple. At times, a guitar is enough. Furthermore, as for the costumes, Chinese usually wear some traditional clothes, but Americans don't care too much about it. I believe everyone should have an essential understanding of two countries' folk music. And then I'd like to tell a story about the folk music and me. To be honest, several months ago, I didn't like folk music at all. And I think it was very old, boring, and out of date. And furthermore, a simple survey was ever made by me about whether you love folk music. The fact was that nobody around me liked it. When I asked almost 100 students, and what we loved most was pop music or some R&B, which was popular all over the world. And on the contrary, my mother liked Chinese folk music very much. At first, I thought it was because of her age, so that she couldn't inspire the folk music. However, when I asked her about that, she said she thought she could feel some poor things from the folk music, which modern music didn't have. After that, fortunately, I took the class of music appreciation, and the teacher taught us the folk music by coincidence. Why both my mother and my teacher loved folk music, and what kind of charm were attracting them so deeply. Whether every country's folk music has their similarities or not, hit by so many questions, I started to search the answers. And when I reported the data, I found I fell in love with the folk music gradually. We can learn a lot from it because of its long history, and we can enjoy a pro-emotion among people. And we can also make ourselves calm down in a different world. And in this world, folk music is a beautiful language. Modern communicate with history, and people from different regions communicate with each other, and culture can exchange through it. What a rich treasure we have! Believe it or not, only the melody exists. Can we understand each other? For example, Chinese singer Deng Ziqi Jam and the American folk singer Jason Mraz has a song Lucky together, and the famous Chinese folk singer Song Zuying has performed at the Grammy Awards. Despite the language barrier and the cultural differences, we could understand each other through the singer's performance and the melody of the song. Therefore, folk music is truly a beautiful language. Last but not least, folk music can bring people closer, convey our love to everyone, and cement our friendship. All in all, maybe we have adapted to the quick life nowadays. Nevertheless, folk music can still bring us into such a pro world that we can escape from the noises in the reality. And Above all, we all should know, folk music is not only a kind of music, but also a spirit needs us to inherit. We are facing a situation where some traditionals are dying out, and fewer people love folk music. We are facing a situation where some traditions are dying out, and fewer people like folk music. But I believe no one wants it to disappear one day, because folk music is still a wonderful language nowadays. And at the end of the time, I like to sing a traditional folk song, Jasmine Flower, to everyone. And I like you to know the folk music better. At the end of the time, I like to sing a traditional folk song, Jasmine Flower, to everyone. In order to let you know the folk music better, I will use two different styles. One is American style and the other is Chinese style.
好一朵美丽的茉莉花，好一朵美丽的茉莉花，芬芳美丽满枝桠，又香又白人人夸。让我来将你摘下，送给别人家。茉莉花呀，茉莉花，好一朵美丽的茉莉花，好一朵美丽的茉莉花，芬芳美丽满枝桠，又香又白人人夸。让我来将你摘下，送给别人家。茉莉花呀，茉莉花。That's all. Thank you for listening. Thank you.